Welcome back. Yasmin and Wilfred are still here with me. Now, should the UK pull out of Eurovision, you can give us a call 0207 862 2222 and we'll speak to you in just a moment. So here is this year's UK Eurovision entry. Years and Years star Olly Alexander. Take a look.
Won't you make me dizzy from your kisses? Will you take my hand and spin me round and round until the moment never
So he is due to take part in the grand finale in May, but hundreds of artists, musicians and writers have signed a letter calling for him to be pulled out of the song contest due to the inclusion of Israel, calling themselves Queers for Palestine. The group includes Maxine Peake, the star of TV shows like Dinner Ladies and Silk. Olly has voiced support for Palestine, but he's stopped short of boycotting the competition entirely. Here's what he had to say on Instagram. He says, "It is important for us to stand in solidarity with the oppressed and communicate our heartfelt wishes for peace, an immediate and lasting ceasefire and the safe return of all hostages. We stand united against all forms of hate, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We firmly believe in the unifying power of music, enabling people to transcend differences and foster meaningful conversations and connections. We feel that it is our duty to create and uphold this space with a strong hope that it will inspire greater compassion and empathy." But do you think you should go a step further and pull out, or do you believe that actually politics should just not be dragged into this? Yasmin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I certainly think that it is all about politics. You can't extract politics from the Eurovision or any other stimulus like the Olympics or all of those. You know, they are international celebrations of one kind or another, but politics is in there, right at the heart of it. My problem with this is quite complicated, because I think we should not be participating, but then I think that actually Britain and many other Western countries are arming Israel. And here we are, attacking Israel, which should be attacked for what it is doing to Palestinians, and I totally accept that the hostage, what happened on October the 7th, was a horrible, inhumane thing. But if we're attacking Israel, we are implicated. Do you know what I'm saying? That we're arming Israel. We've not stopped arming Israel through these months.
So you would say maybe this is targeting the wrong thing, keep the politics out of...
targeting Israel, we are implicated, is what I'm saying.
Yes, but do you think we should boycott Eurovision?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's complicated, because
you think we should also stop selling them arms?
Superior, because we're part of the problem.
Got you. Wilfred, how do you feel?
Yasmin has made a really fantastic point, is that the moment you start to politicise something, it becomes very, very complicated about actually, should you pull out, why should, and the connotations are just so confusing. And my stance would be this, is that, every time we talk about this subject, everybody has to be really, really sensitive in terms of not offending one side or the other. It's a really, really delicate subject to sort of discuss. But I just think for something like the Eurovision Song Contest, which is entertainment, it should be very, very much far removed from politics, totally remove it. And that if you as an individual wants to make a statement, that is fine. But what I then don't want happening is that the individual statement that you're making is then going to have an impact on other people who may not feel that way. And that's what I have an issue when we start sort of banning things. And the final point I'd like to make is that this is happening in May. We don't know what the political situation is going to be between now and May. And so all the decisions and all the emotions that we're having now may not actually be what's happening at the time when this is going.
OK, well, let's now speak to Jeff Ingold. He's a journalist who covers LGBTQ+ issues, and he's a huge Eurovision fan. So you're the perfect person to speak to on this front. Do you support the boycott of Eurovision?
Absolutely, yeah. I think a boycott is sort of the only option we have when it comes to Eurovision, because I think an important part of this conversation is Eurovision is a song contest that's meant to represent peace and unity across Europe and the world, and to have a country that's currently engaged in an illegal occupation and an invasion of another country goes against the sort of values that Eurovision professes. And so we should remember that when Russia invaded Ukraine a couple of years ago, they were immediately kicked out of the Eurovision Song Contest. And right now, 1 in 20 people who were living in Gaza this time last year are either dead, missing, or injured. And so it completely flies in the face of what Eurovision stands for, to have Israel perform. It's sort of hypocrisy at the cost of human life. So I don't understand the sort of double standard that's being applied here. Why is it unity in music when it's extended to Ukrainian people, but not to Palestinians?
But what difference do you think this is actually going to make when, as Yasmin correctly says, we sell arms to Israel? So are we really attacking the right place? I mean, this is a celebration of music. This is quite a camp, joyful, music contest. Why on earth target that?
I think it's a good question, but I think part of this point, if we broaden it out, is to talk about cultural boycotts. And cultural boycotts, which is what this would be with Eurovision, because it's sort of a cultural event, have always been a really important part of wider boycott movements. So, for example, when it came to apartheid in South Africa, there were lots of artists and stage shows and playwrights that refused to let their art be performed in South Africa. And that was part of the pressure that was then put on the South African government, but also their own governments. And so I think the idea that boycotting Eurovision for having Israel perform doesn't make a difference is, I think, historically inaccurate to the power of boycotts, but also it shows the way in which culture is a really important part of our histories and the nations that we create. And so to have people perform for a country in a song contest that is currently engaged in war is not helpful. And so I think really this is an important part of that conversation.
Absolutely am with you on every word you've said. Absolutely with you. And I've been part of cultural boycotts, and I'm boycotting a lot of stuff now, just individually. The only point I was making is that why are we still arming Israel? And how can we culturally boycott our own government?
I think that's an important point, Yasmin. And I think, so I'm Canadian actually, and Canada recently, due to protests in Canada, stopped their selling arms to Israel. And so I think what this movement does, and I think what we're seeing with the pressure on Olly Alexander, is to put pressure on the performers, on the broadcasters, so the BBC, which is the broadcaster for Eurovision, to then put pressure onto the government to stop selling arms to Israel. Like, I think the ideal solution for hopefully most people who sort of want to see peace is that there is a ceasefire, the release of the hostages, and an end to arms sales to Israel. And so I think we have to look at Eurovision is such a huge moment in European sort of culture and history. So the cultural boycott is really there to raise awareness and start a conversation, because I think the other side to not boycotting means that we're not talking about what's happening in Gaza. And so we're missing an opportunity to raise awareness of the situation that's happening. So this is, I'm not saying that this is a guarantee, but I'm saying it's one part of a wider set of issues to hopefully end arms sales to Israel.
It's simply a form of protest. Jeff, stay with us. I'm going to go to calls now. Susan from Aberdeen, what's your thoughts on boycotting Eurovision? Will you be doing it?
Definitely not. I mean, I'm not a great Eurovision fan, but Olly is such a great performer. He's a great actor. I love the programme It's a Sin.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot to say for himself, and I think he's standing up for his community. And I think to pull out is just giving up. And I think he needs to be there and represent the gay bisexual community and be there for them. Some say, no, I'm not backing out just because there's another country that's not got the same values as maybe we have.
Susan, I totally take your point. And also maybe just why should it punish Olly Alexander as an individual as well? He'll be looking forward to it, and yet he has to stand down. What would you say to that, Jeff?
I think Olly Alexander is in a really tough place. I have a lot of sympathy for him, but I also think we as individuals have to make decisions in these complicated situations about what we do and what we stand for. And, for Olly to sort of put out a statement that doesn't address the issues at hand, I think is really worrying. And I think he is in an immense position that I think is really difficult. But I also think if he was true to himself, he would not be performing.
Okay, Jeff Ingold, thank you very much for joining us for that conversation. Susan, thank you for your call as well. Alexis has stepped in.